Hey guys, welcome to the Human Renovation Podcast, our very first episode. My co-host, Dr. John Duffy, I'm Frank Fontana. And before we get into it with our first guest, I want to kind of just tell you exactly what the Human Renovation Project is all about.
It's a great way to look at the therapeutic process and the process of change, just the change in your psyche and the way you look at yourself, the world, the future is renovating, it's improving, it's getting better all the time.
So you clearly see the parallels in my world as a designer, a creator, a renovator.
Absolutely.
Into what you do with clients.
Yeah, 100%. I think fundamentally we do the same thing, and I think our worlds meet in the space, in the space between, the psyche and the building, And
Dave Matthews there,
yeah,
space between.
Yeah, right.
I've kind of dabbled across the board in many different genres of self-help.
Right.
I'm no expert by any means, but I've lived life in a way where I've forced experiences on myself. Whether I attracted them, I guess we do.
Right. I think we do, and I think you have. And I follow some of those same gurus, and I think we all kind of grow to become our own experts in our own psyches.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we're trying to do here too, is to get you to look at, learn from Frank and I, learn from our guests, learn about how to kind of self-examine,
Right.
and the minute you can do that and create some degree of self-awareness, then you can make some change. But if you're kind of stuck in brain fog, the day-to-day, you never get that opportunity, and I think too many lives are lived in that kind of space.
So in our lineup of guests, and we have one coming up next, John Marcoux is going to be joining us, former lawyer, now yogi. He's an author, really deep, interesting dude, fascinating guy, who's gonna drop some life knowledge on us.
And the idea is to shift something. We want you to walk away with something new that you maybe didn't know before, hadn't looked at it that way before. We want some takeaway every single time you hear our voices that feels like, okay, that I can apply in my life today.
So let's jump right into our first guest on our very first podcast, John Marcoux. He used to be a suit, right? And
tie right up to the neck, button, the whole thing.
And you're here because you are a product of transformation in one of the most dramatic stories I've probably ever heard. So why don't you give the folks a little background on who you are? Well,
thank you for making me the inaugural guest here on your excellent show.
We were trying not to use the word guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly. This is a lab experiment, Jeff.
Well, I practiced law in the tallest skyscrapers in the biggest cities for 6 years. Doesn't seem like much, but it felt like 40 years in the desert.
And you've seen people crumble, your fellow lawyers.
Crack, physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yep. And instead of you going down that path, I think you told me the story where you were at the brink and you wrote a letter to your mom, was it?
I did write a letter to my mom, but that was much later. I was at the brink. I was helping review a very important document being prepared for the United States Supreme Court. And the worst thing that could happen is for somebody to stand in front of those judges, say something, and one of the judges say, "You're wrong." So one day I was at my office with my computer, with my books, with my notes, with everything, and it got to the point where I was looking at everything so much I stopped moving. And I went from my eyeballs, from the notes to the computer, and my brain was just spinning all by itself. And then after 15, 20 minutes, the lights overhead went off. They were automated. And when they don't sense a human is in the room anymore, they turn off. And there was no human left in the room, according to the technology.
Right. Wow.
And it had a certain zzz, it had a zzz, that kind of sound.
Sure.
And when the sound stopped, the silence was deafening. And I realized immediately what happened, and I refused to move because I loved the silence. And then I got up, the lights went back on. I walked down the hall to my partner's office, and I said, "I am not long for this business anymore."
A lot of people watching and listening would love to stand up and say, "I'm done, I'm out," and then they have those pressures of hearing the voices of their parents or the other people who influence them to stay where they're at because it's safe and it's easy. What really was like that? I'm done, man. I'm done. I don't care about my financial situation. Everyone needs that push to say, I'm doing it.
It struck me like a gong.
Wow.
John, clinically, do you call that a breakdown?
I think I call it a breakthrough clinically. I don't know the degree to which you broke down. How were the 6 years that preceded the moment when the lights went out and the light went on?
I loved law school. They were the best years of my life. I was innocent and clueless. Now when people ask me, I think I'm going to go to law school, what do you think? I say to them, do you like fighting all day, every day? Even when your head's hitting the pillow, you're still fighting in your mind?
Yeah.
So when the day I walked into that Midtown Manhattan office, I felt a pit in my stomach that never left. And my only joy in practicing was when I was doing things or associating with people at my law firm or my clients that I wasn't getting paid for. It was when I had to grind, is when I was, oh.
Were you creative in your teens and in your early years?
Creative? Not particularly, although that definitely emerged in my writings.
Which is an interesting question. John, do you believe people are born creative? Just like, some say people are born talented, and then other people believe you create talent.
I think we're all born creative to some extent. What happens way too often, I think, is we create kind of a shtick within families where, he's not an artist, or she's not a math person, or we limit our kids unnecessarily, especially in creative arenas.
Yeah.
And now, more and more, because of technology, creativity is kind of squashed. It's squelched from even curriculum now.
Yeah.
And
which is
to me,
horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Going back to the creativity and how it's being squashed on an educational level is just so wrong on every single, because you're born creative, you're born exploring, you're born to learn and grow, and I think when you are nurtured creatively as a child, look at all the geniuses in the world from the perspective of creativity.
Yeah, there's nothing more important than kind of finding that creative element of yourself, because then you don't make career decisions that maybe drive you in the wrong directions. You and I have striking parallels in our lives, John, because I was a CPA for 6 years before I changed careers.
Did you have that moment, that light going off moment?
When
the world shut down?
I had that moment way too many times, but John was smart enough to listen to it when it showed up.
Yeah.
So I had these anxiety attacks regularly from day one. I knew walking in the firm day one, I was thinking, is this adulting? Is this what we do now? And
adulting, great
right?
term.
Right.
Time to get your 401k together.
Exactly,
I'm
right?
22 years old.
John, when you left law, you found a new passion.
One day, I took a dare and showed up at a hot yoga class, and I thought I was an athlete. And I was humbled thoroughly in this class. And I left, and I remember sitting out in the lobby, catching my breath, sweating, almost shaking, thinking I was going to curse out my friend when he came out of the locker room. Why did you bring me to this class? And then it struck me, I haven't felt this stress-free in 6 years.
Wow.
What if I came to this class every day, couple weeks, and just stayed in the room, not even do the poses that well, just see them, stand up, attempt them, catch my breath, and I lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks.
Just from standing
I
there?
grew a half inch. I went from 5'10.5" to 5'11".
Really?
And with that spine straightening, I showed up in my office, and it was beautiful old wood and just, like Hollywood movie theater law firm. But I saw it with new eyes, and the lawyers and the secretaries and the paralegals scuttling about, and I just said, they all look so miserable. This is a vat of poison. I'm swimming in a poisonous sea. I'm still young. I gotta figure this out. And I kept taking yoga.
How old were you when this was happening?
It's 30 years old. 31 years old.
That is young.
It's young, but a lot of people at 30 or 31 feel like, I've chosen this path, I'm stuck here. What else could I possibly do, right?
I climbed this ladder.
Yeah.
And it's leaning against the
went,
long wall.
And I went to law school, right? So I went to undergrad, then I went to law school. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Could I really change my mind?
And throw the ego in there too.
Sure.
I'm an Ivy League lawyer. I work at this firm. I make this money. Look
That's
at
right.
my Acura. I'm only 29. All that stuff.
I'm on the partner track,
Prestige.
man.
Oh, I was right there.
Yeah.
And they were calling me Golden Boy because even though some of the partners were thinking, hey, that guy's got to go, I was also winning everything. So
Right.
I was probably a year ahead of where I should have been. And you would think you're on a team, everybody's helping each other out. I have associates slightly above me or my age or just below me can't wait to put the knife between my ribs, because if I take apart, for every 10, 15 associates, only one can make the partner seat. So it's like a Ninja Warrior. Everybody's fighting for
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the
On
Flies.
top of the pressures you have as an attorney, you also have the layers of, at any moment, one of these people are going to claw you and bring you down, or attempt to,
Sabotage.
you. That's immense pressure amongst itself.
And like all great adventures, right when the spark was fired, right when I had just taken a few weeks of classes and realized there's something else here, somebody came out of stage left, and we talked about it, and he said, all you really need is not a great exit strategy, just a decent exit strategy. You don't have to win the lottery.
Yeah.
And as soon as I thought, maybe I could go and teach and open up these hot yoga studios myself, the instant that happened, I had a second thought. What's my mom gonna say? So I drafted a business plan, not so much for the bank saying lend me money, or for a landlord saying lease me the space, but Mom, I'm not crazy. That was basically.
But you had to justify to Mom first before anything else.
And thankfully, she was visiting down in Florida with some friends, a serial entrepreneur who did very well. And I faxed the first draft to his home where she was vacationing, and he picked it out of the tray first, and he saw it, and he handed it to her and said, this is one of the better business plans I've read in 25 years.
Wow.
So it landed right.
So I want to segue to a topic that John and I discussed in length, law of attraction. How much of what you think happened in your life is due to the law of attraction?
It's everything. I mean, I'm not a vacuum. I'm not an island. It has to happen like that. It has to.
So, in your mind, how did it work for you? You put the intentions out there. You put the new idea in your head that I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. You created a business plan, which most people don't, because I do believe, law of attraction still takes work to get the thing to come to you.
There's the daydreamers and then there's the doers. You need a little
Right.
bit of both. And if you are only one, you better find a partner.
Exactly, which is a great point.
Good thought.
That
Good
is a
thought.
great point. So in your mind, how did the law of attraction work for you?
It literally worked like that, because about my second or third month into full-time practice, people were telling me, you're glowing. For the first time in my life, women were walking up to me. I thought, what's going on here? This is wonderful. And I went back to Long Island, where I grew up, and one of my dearest, oldest friends has a set date on Christmas Eve, on the 23rd. If you're in town, show up at my house. So high school, elementary school, it's a nice gathering.
Yeah.
And when you open the door to her home, it's a wide open, you can see the whole house from the front door. And when I opened it, I saw friends from kindergarten, high school, all the way up. And all the way behind the crowd, 40 or 50 people, there was one girl smiling in the back. She saw me and smiled, and I smiled. And I looked down at my feet and I said, there she is. And that's my wife now.
You're kidding.
And
Give me chills.
I tried to get at her the whole party, but the Sweeney brothers had her surrounded. I couldn't break through.
Damn Sweeney's.
Every town has their Sweeties.
But we were looking at each other. And then she wasn't from my hometown. She came as a friend from somebody from my hometown. And my friend, who was dating her friend, was the superstar soccer player, all-American guy from my town. We were great friends. And those two had a little too much and got into a fight in the middle of the party. It was embarrassing, and it felt like it was about to get physical. And at the exact same moment, from different sides of the room, we both separated them, got them home, and then I said, let's go to the diner, the 24-hour diner, and we had our first date right there.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
And so to tie that around, a week later I called her, and we were telling each other, she didn't really like her job. She worked for a big marketing, Nike, Michael Jordan, sounds really great, but the grind. And I was sharing mine, and she was sharing her ideas of, I want to go be a snowboarder. I want to be, the escapism.
Yeah.
Sure.
I said, I've had so many escapist daydreams. Sometimes I look out of my skyscraper window and see the guy sliding down outside going, I'd rather be him than me right now. You know what I mean? I'd rather be going, with the squeegee. And then I said, I have a daydream that has come and it's not going away. I give my boss the finger, I go to yoga training, and I open up my own hot yoga studio. And the phone went silent. Now this was early cell phone technology, and I thought, either she thought this guy's a loser, or I dropped the call, and then clear as crystal, the other side of the phone, she said, if you need a receptionist, I'm there. And it felt like one of those old toys, with the big key that winds up. My rib cage shook.
Wow.
And that's the night I wrote the business plan.
So you attracted her into your life. You attracted the yoga studio into your life.
And then the two, it's almost like Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Ah! And then I played the plan out exactly.
Did you
like
give
that.
your boss the finger?
Not physically, but in other ways.
In other ways. Good.
Yes.
Good. How was that feeling? How liberating was that?
Usually they say give notice 2 weeks in advance. I was about a month away, and one of the harassing partners started jibing the partner running my section, the intellectual property section I worked in, trademarks, patents, copyrights, was driving me about this guy that looks like he's having too much fun. Let's make him bill more hours. And so I got called down to the carpet, and the partner I really liked said, "What are we gonna do about this?" And I said, "I'll tell you what we're gonna do about this." And that was that. But I went to training. I came to Chicago because it was the biggest city in North America that didn't have hot yoga yet. And my girlfriend from New York flew to Chicago to meet me, and some friends who told us, if you're going to look in Chicago, these are the best 3 neighborhoods. Start at these intersections: Milwaukee, North and Damon, Clark, Diversey, and Broadway, some hot spots.
Sure.
And so 10 minutes into being in Chicago, 10 minutes, we're walking down Milwaukee Avenue, and I look across the street, because we went on opposite sidewalks, and she's standing there with a little old man, and he's pointing upstairs like this. And so she waves me over, and we walk up the stairs, and it's one of these unbelievable brick and timber lofts, huge 8-foot windows, doors like Willy Wonka just to get in. They were huge. And I had an idea in my head. This is the business plan, this is the budget. I was going to get a little rinky-dink place and see what I can pull off.
Sure.
He walked in, she followed him. I followed both of them, got 2 steps in, saw this place and said, "Oh, no." And I physically turned and walked away like, forget this. And I heard her say in the same voice that she said on the phone originally about, I'll be your receptionist.
Yeah.
She said, "Only good things can happen here." And I heard that voice. I turned back around, walked in there, and I never negotiated a lease before. It went on for months, and wasn't really getting anywhere. So we were spending the beach, our summer of love, back in Long Island, and 9/11 happened, and I took the first plane out of New York, got to Chicago, sat on some milk crates with the landlord. We spoke no words. We had several terms neither one of us liked. We both signed a contract, and that was it.
Wow. No kidding. So John, I can imagine if somebody is watching us, listening to us, or both, they're watching you, they can hear you, they hear this guy with energy, with juice, right? And they might be thinking, this guy's story is an anomaly, right? Like this guy somehow, maybe the law of attraction works for this guy, because he's got this juice, right? But me, I draw bad luck to myself. Do you think that we all have the potential to make this magic stuff happen?
Absolutely. We have, I think a lot of people have misconceptions about who they are and what their deepest character strengths are and what drives them. And if you can identify that, and which I luckily did without being totally cognizant of those strengths of love of learning and kindness and humor, which permeate my business on every level. There's one rule here: default to generosity. If you don't know what to do, be generous. Even if we have to lose the house, we'll figure it out on the back end.
There is no rule with the law of attraction that says once you have it, it's going to be easy.
Right. It's always going to require more work, right? And the more you put into it, the more you're going to get back. And you need to keep a few basic principles in mind. I love that idea that the one rule is generosity, right? So somehow, the more we give, the more we're going to get.
John, clinically, from your research and studies, is there any science to the law of attraction?
Yeah, there is, as long as, and you and I have talked about this before, Frank, as long as you operate from a mindset that allows for the good stuff to come into your life.
The law of attraction is based on vibration and energy. So if you're vibrating like a tuning fork at a certain frequency, whatever that frequency is, you're going to be attracting back to you. But that statement of just, if you are aware of your underlying vibration all the time, which we aren't, we're unconscious most of the time, as conscious as you are, can you relate that there's moments where you're just not, and
Sure.
that's when the shit happens?
Sure.
Right?
By the way,
Absolutely.
Bob Marley also believed he was channeling God the whole time, and he was constantly working on a vibration to attract the world to God's message. That was his whole adult life.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
I will mention that when it comes to the laws of attraction, the most fundamental way I have found to fire that up is to admit what I'm not good at, what I'm weak at, what my faults are. There was one moment early when my yoga businesses, which had a decade of easy success, I thought, I'm a genius. I just showed up at the right place at the right time. When I started realizing, there are mounting difficulties here, survival is real, I tried to keep it from my staff. And by the way, I can't get rid of anybody. Everybody who starts there never leaves. I mean, I've had the same people working there, and they've been aggregating over the 2 decades. So finally, when the pressure got to this point, and I think the staff started sensing something wasn't quite right, I called a meeting, and I opened it, and I said, I'm good at this, this, and this, but the business requires all these things, and I suck. And and lawyers are trained never to say, I don't understand what's going on,
Sure.
I'm wrong, I made a mistake. You never hear lawyers come out of that. And for me to say this went against my training, and the love that came pouring back when I had confessed, the talent that was resident among my staff that came in and emerged to fill the gaps that I couldn't fill, it made all the difference in the world.
You can almost feel some of the people listening wince at this very idea, right? of showing the weakness, right? And not recognizing. So we keep citing these gurus. I don't know if either of you have read Brene Brown, and she does this work on vulnerability. And we believe, especially we men, believe that vulnerability is this weakness, when in fact our vulnerability, she would argue, and I think I would stand right behind her on this, is our greatest strength. So, being able to step out there, say your truth, say, hey, I'm good at this stuff, I'm falling apart at.
Facebook and Instagram, impossible. Everybody's doing the exact opposite.
For sure.
Look how awesome, look how strong, look how beautiful.
Until this.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm dead serious,
Time
John.
to renovate.
This whole human renovation idea is really coming from, and John and I talk about this, it's a personal therapeutic message, and humility is everything in that.
Yeah.
To say to hey, listen, I'm recreating myself, I'm rebranding myself, I'm jumping into this world that is so new, it's for me at least, and be able to turn that on and say, you know what, I'm having a rough day, because
Sure.
it's very easy to get kicked in the balls and go roll away and disappear. It's the ones that keep coming back, and reinventing and finding themselves again through a process. This is my process, the human renovation process, and that's why I bring in guys like you into this, to really just uncover these secrets to what makes people continue to succeed and reinvent themselves, create new foundations, break through. If you were to sum up your, let's call it, key processes to get you from then to now, what would be, in short, you'd say, like, things that really stood out to you?
I am myself. I've created an ecosystem where I can just be myself. And again, default to generosity. I'm not dealing with the cash, I'm dealing with the love. That has been amazing.
So generosity, one.
Being myself.
Being authentic, two.
Doing what I want to do. Like, if I don't want to do something, and I have just enough freedom where if I don't want to do something, I don't do it. And if I want to do something, I tackle it. So I haven't been doing I haven't been following thou shalt. I've been following what makes my heart blossom for almost 2 decades now.
And you threw the word love out there, and that's a word I think that when we think of business, we don't usually typically think of this word, but you bring love to your work, yeah.
And so I've created a small business with an ecosystem of generosity and love and feeling good and renovating oneself by sweating and stretching and getting out of your head for a few minutes. It's been wonderful.
Which makes you think, how many people are walking around in pain, just hidden pain all the time? I mean, John, you're busy. Your practice is busy. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, you are booked 6 days a week for the most part, and you're living this world on the other side, hearing all these stories.
I can speak to this part. I think way too many people, even the people we think we admire most, behind the prettiest doors in town, there is a lot of pain, familial pain, family of origin pain, just depression and anxiety, the pressures of everyday life. It's engulfing our country. Fine, I can do this hour by hour across the hall with one or two people at a time, but to Frank's point,
we could do this. And reach the world,
mass, right? And reach the world, right? And that's the idea, is like, to really make some impact here beyond just what you can do in an hour.
And I think if enough humans, if a high enough percentage of humans reach this critical level of anxiety, just like the greenhouse gases, once you get to a certain point, watch out. You're
seeing it and just on social media. If you were to like, hashtags are where people find what's relevant and trending. If you hashtag motivation, if you hashtag inspiration, you hashtag transformation, you're looking at like 20 million, 30 million people searching that hashtag. There is a reason, folks, that they are searching that, because people are looking for answers. I don't know if I'm just more aware of it, or if you're right, John, that there is a critical mass happening. John, if you could jump in here with the why.
Yeah.
Is it technology, or is it really fucking everybody up?
Well, absolutely. Technology is fucking everybody up. No, there's no doubt about it.
It's a podcast rehearsing.
I didn't know if this was a G or a PG.
We can go all the way down. All the way down.
I dropped the first fuck bomb, right? There you go. Free reign, everybody can fuck, right?
So there's good research out there, good research. And in my field, we tend not to do good research. We tend to look at like 4 or 5 subjects and say, I think we got a trend. But good research with tens of thousands of people, I would have guessed that maybe 4 or 5 hours in front of a screen would drive a little more depression, anxiety, just knowing how much the young people I work with, and even the people in our age groups that I work with, look at screens. Because most of us are probably in front of a screen 4+ hours a day, one way or another. A lot of people.
I'm sorry.
Far more than that.
That's billions of hours a day just in America alone.
So the tipping point for anybody, for depression, anxiety, attention issues, suicidal ideation, is 2 hours a day. And if you think about it, and you take yourselves out of the way we live now.
Hold on, suicidal ideation.
Yes.
Like, I actually am really putting energy towards thinking about how I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're saying.
You are far more likely to experience those kinds of dark thoughts if you are in front of a screen for more than 2 hours a day.
And you might not even be fully cognizant of it. They're kind of percolating up like
Correct.
bubbles in a seltzer bottle.
Is it because you're looking at everybody's faux life on Instagram and how great their life is and their seconds that they're posting? And
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is that if you're in a static first-person shooter game and in front of on your Xbox, and all you're looking down the scope of a rifle for 4 hours, I don't think that's good for you.
One of my lectures is called Mindfulness, and when I'm just defining what mindfulness is, which is self-guided attention plus an open, curious attitude.
Sure.
When it comes to attention, most people think, if I asked you or you or you, like, are you in charge of what you're paying attention to right now? Most people would say, yeah, I'm totally in charge. But if you're looking at those screens, you're deluding yourself.
Is there a fundamental shift in parenting that needs to happen, and I know you're big on this, between educating, making the young boys out there be strong enough but still emotionally available enough to have both worlds? Because I do think there's something to be said of the prior generation of tough guys versus the millennials and what people are saying are the softer generation of boys that are crying when they scrape their knee.
I think you're talking about agility, recognizing which is appropriate, and a boy can shuttle back and forth depending on the circumstances he finds himself in.
I mean, but you work with a lot of young men.
And I like that idea of agility. I mean, I like that idea of like being able to thread that needle. I mean, that's what parenting is a lot of times, especially parenting of young men, but young women as well. I mean, I think that's starting to blend. As parents, we need to think about like, okay, so I want my child to feel safe, and I want my child to know in every moment of their lives that I love them unconditionally.
I tell my son every day I love him. I tell him how proud I am for the littlest things, because you need that. Like, and I think every child needs to hear that from their parents.
On the worst day.
On the worst days.
On the worst day.
And on the best days.
Yeah.
Let's bring you to today, John, and kind of wrap this up with your latest project. aside from being an amazing lawyer, going back to the industry that started to help other lawyers figure out their anxieties and deal with the pressures of being a lawyer, and being a yogi, you wrote a couple books. You have the Bruce Lee book, right?
Right. That I did in 2011. That was a passion project with a friend, and as soon as it came out, I realized, I can do so much better than this. And at the months where I was taking yoga and just about to leave my law firm, another passion project started, and I'm in my 18th year now. I mean, you want to talk about a life lesson in perseverance. I just had this feeling that there was this great story that nobody was telling. So I spent years studying it. And I was like, what is it? What is it? And I realized I don't know how to tell a story. I mean, I can tell a story, and we can sit around here and BS, but sure. I mean, a great story the way the greats do it. So I took a few years off, and I studied how Broadway plays, Hollywood movies, Hollywood TV shows, even commercials. Like, how is it put together? Like, the real deal.
Yeah.
And in about the third year of studying how to tell a story, again, the light bulb went off over my head, and I realized, stop trying to tell every story. Tell the best story. What's the best story? And when I was looking at the source of my fascination, and I was comparing it with what I had learned, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a blueprint for this. And when I superimposed it on everything I knew, it was like playing Mad Libs. Everything sorted itself out. And I have a draft copy of my opus right here. This is
Emancipate Yourself. One of my all-time idols, Bob Marley.
Yes.
I'm so thrilled that you actually did this.
So
tell us about it.
Okay, so here's a guy who grew up in the worst conditions you can imagine. We're in LaGrange. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly.
This guy
Suburb
grew up
of Illinois, right?
This guy grew up in the third world ghetto where people just had tin roofs over their head. He faced starvation regularly. He went to the dump and would pick out apple rinds and things just to live. And he learned how to play music. He learned how to sing. Transistor radios were out. It was a big thing. He heard Motown and said, wow, this is what I want to do. And no matter what he did, he couldn't make it. And he became a great singer, songwriter, a gift of melody that people still talk about, but just couldn't break through. And along, just like, I basically modeled the story after Luke Skywalker in the first movie. Along comes an old man, starts to teach him a few things. They called it Earth Force down in Jamaica, but it's the Force. He teaches them about something bigger, and he assumes these religious beliefs, and they light him up, and they make his career, and they do everything you've ever heard about Bob Marley. And every song is permeated with God's message.
So true.
But when the religious beliefs that lifted his life prohibited him from having surgery that could save his life.
And what do you have, gout?
He had cancer.
Cancer.
And they follow the Old Testament like the most orthodox people in Judaism. And it says, thou shalt not cut the flesh. You can't do it. So he couldn't get the surgery that would save his life.
Started in his foot, right?
Started in his big toe.
They thought originally it was gout or something, and then it turned into be...
He was never going to the doctor. He just kept wrapping it up and playing soccer, kept bleeding. And one day a guy tackled him and the toenail came off and it was a hot mess. And he showed up and the guy's like, this is the 70s, cancer treatments back then aren't what they are now. He's like, you got to cut off the toe, maybe the whole foot, maybe we don't know, but we got to amputate. And he just said, a year or so, 2 years later, he knew it. I mean, you could see the pictures. He knew he was going down.
Yeah.
And he went he had a 10-album contract. He was doing his 10th album. He surrendered all the tracks to it. They listened to him and they said, I think you got one more. I think you got one more song. And he knew he was dying. And he goes into the recording studio for the last time of his life. And he records Redemption Song. This is the last song this guy ever records. Nobody's heard it before.
One of the best. Bob
You are
Marley.
kidding.
He just like Luke Skywalker had technology he relied on.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the movie, he shuts off the computers and they're like, Luke, what's wrong? And he's like, I got this. And he succeeds.
Yeah.
He made it by using technology, by using reggae to mess with your sense of rhythm, to draw you in, and once you were drawn in, he gave you the message.
Yeah.
This is the first time in his recording history that he goes into the recording studio with just his acoustic guitar. So he lets the technology go. He distills his message to his essence, and it's basically Buddhist. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. That's what I did when I started my yoga studios. That's what I do when I'm lecturing lawyers to escape cognitive traps. They're mentally enslaved with these stupid things that they're not even aware of. And now I feel like with the finishing this book, I've reached a cogency in my life where what I'm teaching in my yoga studios, what I'm teaching at law firms, and what I'm trying to present through this book are all the same thing. Emancipate yourself, take control of yourself, and figure it out. That's what you're talking about here.
Brilliant, man. Brilliant. One of my favorite songs, by the way.
Great song. And just, how did you pick Marley? Of all the heroes, right?
We were around smoking a lot of weed.
Yeah, right.
One day.
I know you got. This is a long story. Let me see if I can compress it. The weeks I started practicing law in New York City, and that gut in my stomach, I had this innate sense that I had no more rhythm in my life. I felt like I couldn't even walk straight. I was a good soccer player. I could swim. I could do everything. And so I was fascinated with congas. You know the big barrel drums?
Sure.
The rum drum, like the old rum barrels that were converted. And so wherever I went in New York, I saw all these amazing West African Caribbean bands playing, and guys on congas playing like hummingbirds. I was like, whoa, I want to learn how to do this, even just the basics. And I asked them, do you give lessons? And they all said, no, you got to find Juma Santos. Juma Santos taught us all. So Juma Santos happened to be in Cuba that summer, but when I found him, I started taking lessons 3 times a week, and he broke me down. And I would escape.
Were you like had no rhythms? You started.
I mean, no drumming, no nothing, never played an instrument before. I played trombone 5th grade, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was a decent dashboard drummer. And the first months, he was just breaking my habits. I mean, it was just brutal. It was like paint the fence, wax the car. I mean, it was just long hours of him, the master, breaking me down. So once it broke me down, we spent a year, and I learned a few dozen universal rhythms from West African Caribbean, and I got good. Then he invited me, and I used to play hooky. I used to take long lunches, take the train downtown.
This is why you're still practicing law.
This is when I'm in the office. Good. I would leave the Death Star, go downtown, pull my tie down, study at his knee, and then pull the tie back up and dash back uptown and continue. After a year, he invited me to come because this African dance and drum school that used to be down near Soho, the dancers were always over there. I was always in the drum rooms. Then I got invited. Picture a long hallway, maybe 20 feet wide and 80 feet deep. And all of Manhattan's most beautiful dancers, Alvin Ailey's, ballet, and tons of people trying to break into it. They're down there with a gal who looks like a professor from the movie Fame, right? And so she's doing it. She runs all the way down. I'm with Juma and 4 or 5 other drummers, and she's like, I need this beat with this and this and this. And Juma would hit all of her congas, doom, 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 doom. And he knew the voices of the drums. He goes, John, play this. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. And then the other guy would be like, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da. And all of a sudden we'd come together, and I'm like, oh, these little drills that I learned, just like Karate Kid, they fit something. I was like, this is wonderful. So we're grooving. And then I look down the hallway, and the lead dancer, the professor, she's doing her African, and then right behind her, 4 dancers would follow, then 4, and they'd come at waves, and they came all the way down, right up to the drums, like literally, like right in front of me, and then they'd slide off, and they'd go down the wall, go back to the beginning of the room, and do it, and just a non-stop parade for 2 hours. And I realized every time I went, doo-doo, 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 their bodies were going, doo-doo, 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 and I didn't know the difference between my hands and their bodies and the sound, and it was just mystical.
The energy that drums and music give out, that vibration, man, I know exactly what you're saying. When you're in sync with other drums and the power of that, there's nothing like it. It's meditative on a whole nother level, man. Like that, those women drawing to you and you becoming one with them, there's nothing like that feeling. You're lost in the vibration at that moment.
I think it's a fundamental human experience. I just read an article last week where I think some guy's going to win some Nobel on it. They realized that when an egg is fertilized and it starts replicating into 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, they realize that it doesn't happen unless the cells have a rhythm with each other. And when the rhythm's broken, the cellular development just goes.
You play guitar. I mean, you know.
I play guitar, yeah, and I think that there's, circling back to your talk about vibration a while ago, I think that's kind of our fundamental connection. People say music is this universal language, and John, as you started talking about reggae, your body started moving. Everyone was starting to go.
I was here and feeling what he was saying. I was like, yeah, I'm moving with you.
There wasn't even music in the room, but somehow we felt some vibration, right? You know what I mean? So there's something fundamental about it, and and there is no more kind of, I think, core basic energy that we can share with one another. And as your kids get older, you guys will run into this, but my son picked up a guitar when he was 15, and I was so frustrated because I taught him the 3 basic chords. I was like, hang in there, kid. And and then he's playing like Coldplay's, like he's playing all the way up the neck in ways I could never even imagine playing. So I'm like backing him up now, but at least we're playing together, and
wow.
everyone's and singing, and with that experience is transcendent. It's like nothing. It's joy like nothing I've ever experienced in my life in any other format.
I think you're there, bro. I think you're already there.
All right, bro. Right on.
John, thank you so much for being our
Thank
first guest
you.
here on the Human Renovation Project and sharing a lot of your personal stories and your journeys. It's been awesome.
I loved it. I hope to be invited back. I will have a tool belt on me next time.
I think if we do it shirtless with tool belts, we'll get way more listeners.